Alrighty, let's write some CSS. Open up your Cartoon Hero folder, drag it into Sublime Text, and open up the index file as well as your hero.css. So what we need to do is we need to style the header and its elements, we need to style the content and its elements, and we need to style the footer and its elements. So you can either switch between index and hero, or you can copy and paste, which I like to do. So I like to say copy, and I like to paste, and then I like to comment it out. And a comment is something that the browser won't see, and you write it like so, which is great. In HTML, you can write a comment with this syntax, which is really cool. If you want to leave yourself some notes like, hey, check this out, you can do that too. That doesn't come through to the browser, it doesn't even notice it. Okay, so I like to just comment it out and then reference it from here. So my header, what I want to do with my header, I want it to be a solid color, so I'm going to say the background color. I want it to be a blue, but I want it to be a special blue. So in Google Chrome, I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to search for a color picker. I normally just go for the first option, and I want a blue, so that blue looks pretty good. I'm going to resize the browser. This one here looks good. So I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put a hash in front of it and paste it. Fantastic, that's my background color. I want there to be a bit of space around the elements inside the header, so I'm going to give it a padding, and I'm going to give it a padding of, say, 40 pixels. Now I could write it like this, so padding right, I could give it a value, I could say padding left and padding top and padding bottom and padding whatever, but there's a shortcut. If I want them all to be the same, I just say padding and give it a value. If I want to do all of the values, I can do it in one line. I can say the top value, I can then say the right value, the bottom value, and then the left value. So they can be different. If I want the top and the bottom to be the same, and the left and the right to be the same, I can literally just write it like that. But because I want it to be all the same, I'm just going to keep it as 40 pixels. Okay, the next thing I want to do is say my H1. Now I could write it as all the H1s in the header, but I know there's only one H1, so I'm just going to keep it short. I want the font size to be about 90 pixels. We'll see what it looks like just now. And I want its color to be white. Fantastic. I then have this image inside my header, but I know there's another image. So this is where I will say the image inside of the header, and I want it to be in the middle. So I'm going to say my header, let's text align center, and this will align my header and my image. Okay, so what else do I want my image to do? I want it to be round. So I'm going to give it a border radius, and I'm going to say, I'm going to make it 150 pixels, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so if you are like, what the heck, how did you know it was border radius? Well, if you don't know something, just Google it. It is the easiest way to do something. So if you Google something like round corners CSS, you'll find a bunch of information. Click through on any of the links. They're really helpful. They'll explain a lot, and then just implement it in your site. Okay, so after we've saved, go to Google Chrome and refresh. Looks pretty good. You'll see that the corners make it not quite round. You'll also notice that I filled in a bunch of extra information like about Ralph, his characteristics, and his friends at the bottom with links. So if you haven't done so, do that. Now I want this to be round. So inspect it, and let's just increase the width of the inspector. And you'll see that as I hover over the image, it says that it's 450 pixels by 450 pixels. So there's two ways to go about this. I could either search for an image resizer, use Photoshop or any other image app. Pick resize is pretty cool. Or I could just leave it as is and change the width and height. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to see what it looks like. I'm going to say width, let's go for 300 pixels because 300 pixels and 150 pixels go together, as 150 is half of 300. So that looks good. So I'm going to implement that in my CSS file, width 300 pixels. I don't need to change the height simply because it auto resizes with the width. I could change the height and the width would auto resize with the height. I can skew things and make things disproportionate if I set a different width and a different height for a square image. The next thing I want to do is I want to put a border on it. There's a few lines that you need to know here, but just like there's a shortcut for the padding, there's a big shortcut for border. So here I want to say I want my border thickness to be 10 pixels, I want the border style to be solid, and I want the color to be a red sort of color. So I'm going to go find that. It needs to be red and something like this. CC0000 looks good. So if I copy that and I then paste it here and I save, let's have a look at what it looks like. Looks pretty good. It could be a bit thicker, so let's see what it looks like if it's a bit thicker. I'm just pressing the up arrow here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. 24, but then my width looks, I don't know, something's wrong. The border radius is wrong. So I'm going to change my border radius until it looks good again. It looks good. What's that? 174. So I'm just going to copy all of this because that's exactly what I want. Fantastic. And then I'm going to save. Refresh. You'll now see that there's a border which is different from the actual width. So my width is still 300, but my border on top, bottom, left, and right is 24. So all in all, my height and width of this image is 348. Okay. The next thing I want to do is change all of this text to something a bit more superhero-y. So I'm going to use some default text. I'm going to set the HTML and the body's default text or font family to Arial. And if they don't have Arial, I'm going to say sans serif. Okay? If you don't know what a font family is, just Google it. You'll find a bunch of information. So let's save. Come back here. Yeah, that looks a bit more superhero-y. Okay. Looks good. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is get rid of this white border around everything. That is also an HTML and body attribute. So let's change that. I want to say padding. Sometimes it could be padding. I'm going to set that to 0. And these are the default styles that come with the browser. So it doesn't look like it's padding. So I'm going to add margin. I'm going to set that to 0. Take padding away. Let's save that. Whoa. I don't know what I just did there. What is that? New view into file. Wow. So let's just save. I'm just going to close that. Let's go back to Google Chrome. And voila. The little white gaps around the whole page disappear. So that's pretty much our header. It looks really good. It looks Wreck-It Ralphie. Now the next thing I want to do is do some stuff with our content. So let's remove the header HTML and we can refer back to the content like this now, just for a different way. So there's content, there's a bunch of H2s, ordered lists, images, and whatnot. So the first thing I want to do is address the content element. And I want to give it a max width, just so that it doesn't always span so wide. And I also want to put it in the middle. So I can say margin 0 for top and bottom, and auto for left and right. Now auto makes it really nice, it resizes it for you, but only on the left and right. So let's save this, and let's see what happens. Let's close this. Things look a bit weird, don't they? So what's really cool is when this happens, we can inspect, and we can say go to our content, and let's say max width, let's change it to 400 for now, and let's give it a background color of, wow, corn silk. That looks good. Okay, so corn silk, maybe a little, let's go coral. Coral looks good. Okay, so you can see that that's the max width. If I increase that, you'll see that there's an equal space on the right and the left. Okay, but now this image is just, it's doing some crazy stuff. So what I want to do here is I want to set the big image dot big image, and I want to say max width is 100%. So I'm not giving it an absolute value. Let's see what happens here. I don't want to buy it just yet, thank you. Refresh. And you start to see that, hey, it's sitting at a percentage. So if you resize your browser, it actually scales it for you, which is great for mobile. The next thing I want to do is, in the content, I want to put a bit of padding on, just so that it's not always touching the left and the right. So I want to say padding 0 and 20 pixels. So when I save this, I can then see that there's a bit of white space on the left and white space on the right, but not for my header. The header looks perfect. So the next thing to do is this caption. What I'd like to do here is address it, and I want to make the font size about 16 pixels. I want the font color, so I just go color to be light gray, and then I also want the font style to be italic, so that it actually looks like a caption. So let's save this and see what it looks like. This is Rolf in action. That's fantastic. The next thing I want to do is just make this look a little bit nicer. So my UL, I don't want those disks, so I'm going to say list style none. I'm also going to give it a padding of 0 and a margin of 0. Let's see what happens. Fantastic, but you'll see that the UL in the footer also got changed when I did this, but that's okay. So Jake from Adventure Time, Blue from Foster's, Arthur from King Arthur's Disasters. But those links look a bit weird, so let me change links as well. So all the links, I actually want the color to be red, because that's Wreck-It Ralph's color. And I don't want them to have an underline, so I'm going to say text decoration none. Let's save this, see what it looks like. Fantastic. So the next thing to do is our footer. So let's change our footer a bit. I want it to be a very light gray with some padding. So let's say the padding, I'm also going to set to 40 pixels and 20 pixels. Now it doesn't quite look like our footer at the bottom, but remember, it's just a guide. So our footer at the bottom, let's say I want a background color. And now, wow, what should the background color be? let's go pick a color again. I'd really like a black, but make it a really light color black. So let's try this color. So let's just copy this and put a hash here and paste it. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, that looks pretty good, but it's still quite tight to the rest of the content. So what I'd like to do is I'd just like to set a margin, or just a margin top of about 20 pixels. And then I'd also like to change its UL inside a bit. So what I'd like to do here is the UL text align center, so all the text is center. But then I'd also like to say all the allies inside the UL, but inside the footer only, I would like to display as inline. Now at the moment it's displaying as a block, so I can show you that here. So if I had to inspect this element, you can see that it's actually a whole block. You can see by the blue highlight color. So now I'm changing the display to inline, and I'm saying the allies inside the UL inside the footer display as inline. So let's see what this does. Refresh. So made by Rich, made during a Skillshare class, copyright 2015. But it's a bit bunched, so what I'm going to do is change this to an inline block, which means I can apply a margin to it. So margin top 0, and the left and right I'm going to say 5 pixels. Now I'm going to save, refresh here, and that looks pretty good. This on the other hand is in the middle. I don't want that to be in the middle, so I'm just going to put footer UL and just make it text align center for the UL in the footer, and refresh here. Now that's our website. Now share it, go wild, do whatever you want, style it how you want, and then share it. I think the most powerful thing about the web is that you can share it. You can share information. This way is pretty much free. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you a couple of different ways in which to style it. Same HTML, just different CSS. We may put a bit of images in there, but that's basically it. Okay, so once you've created your site, once you're happy with it, or you're happy to share something of it, go to your Github Desktop app and make sure you're on the GH Pages branch, and then let's commit our files, saying first commit for our character page or website. Commit it, synchronize it, and remember what we have to do now. Once it's finished synchronizing, we have to go to github.com. So github.com, we have to go in hero, we have to go to the commit section, we have to make sure that we're on the GH Pages branch, HTML files are written. Okay, let's see what GitHub is doing. It's still synchronizing. Okay. Whew, it's taking a long time. And I wonder if it's because we have some big images there. Okay, there we go. It's synchronized. Let's go back to github.com. Let's refresh. And you'll say first commit for our character page. Okay, there we go. Now what we want to do is we want to go to mrascreencast.github.io. Obviously use your GitHub username. Go to Cartoon Hero, press enter. And you'll see that there's no index.html, and that's because it's picking up that index.html as your first file to go get. And that's your website. You can view it on your mobile phone, you can share with your friends. It looks pretty good. So there we go. Have a dance, have some tea, pat yourself on the back, tell your mom you've just made your first website and you can share it.